I want to be real with you guys. At first, I thought this year's Next Fest was full of crap. There was just so many like Vampire Survivor-like games that it just wasn't very fun. But then I soon discovered that that was just kind of what Steam was recommending to me, because there was a lot of really good games. They were just kind of buried. Not everything I'm going to be talking about today was at Next Fest necessarily. Some of these were older demos that I just finally got around to playing. But I did try all sorts of different genres, and I wanted to kind of share my thoughts with you guys as well as my favorites. So this is Tears of Metal, and in a lot of ways it reminds me of Dynasty Warriors, but the combat is slightly tighter. It doesn't have as many builds, obviously, it's a little indie game, but the fact that this has multiplayer was a lot of fun. I think this was shown at either Summer Games Fest or one of the Xbox showcases or something, and looking at it from an outside perspective, the game graphically kind of looks like crap, but when you're actually playing it, it's really responsive. My only gripe with it is that it's a roguelike, meaning that you probably have to go through a bunch of different runs in order to hopefully get enough passive abilities that you can end up actually fighting the big boss. Because every time me and my mate would end up getting to the boss in the demo, he was just far too powerful and spongy. The next demo is a very, very weird one. This was Swapmeat. I guess the best way I could summarize it is it reminds me a lot of Risk of Rain in that there's a lot of really tight mobility of your character, and it is a third-person shooter where killing enemies has a chance for them to drop a body part that you can then exchange with them. Each of them has different power-ups and different benefits. So during my time with this demo, I found myself building my character towards fire damage while my friend was building towards frost. I will admit that even though you can swap body parts, there's not really that much to it in terms of the complexity of the combat, but at the very least, the mobility of the character was really, really nice, very responsive. I always appreciate a game that just allows you to go super fast. Shift at Midnight, you probably heard about this one. This for me is probably the biggest surprise out of Next Fest. I am so sold on this concept. With the sheer amount of games that are just still to this day ripping off Lethal Company without adding anything new, Shift at Midnight is really, really changing up the formula, and I love it. Like, you obviously still have to complete the mission and get a certain amount of money, otherwise you fail. Meet quota, basically. But it's got a little bit of store management simulator where you have to restock shelves and so on. But every time a customer comes around, you gotta check their ID, cross-reference information that they give you to basically find out whether or not they're a doppelganger. If it's a normal customer, you let them on their way. If it's a doppelganger, you blow their head off. And if any doppelgangers escape, they'll end up summoning some big chonger monster thing, which can hear your microphone. So you'll set up traps and fight against it. It's really spongy, but overall the demo was extremely curated. They did mention that in the full game, they're planning on having like a lot more randomness to make each run varied. And that's kind of what I'm waiting for, because this demo set a really, really nice example of what this game could be. But it was a bit disappointing that playing through the demo a second time, everything was the same. Nocturnal Throne, this is for you Mega Bonk fans out there. If you're a weirdo like me and you felt that Mega Bonk was kind of missing something, Nocturnal Throne is it. The game seems really simple, but the main thing that was so appealing to me about this game is the mobility of the character. You are stacking movement speed, you are stacking multiple jumps. In a lot of ways, the mobility reminded me of Trove, and frankly speaking, I loved what I saw. I just wish more of these Survivor games were set up to be multiplayer, because unfortunately this one is not. I also tried this other game called Packmates, which it's another Survivor game. I don't know, it was a bit weird, but I did enjoy how you actually make a build for your character based on your inventory space. You're basically stacking as much crap in your inventory as you can, and each of the items in your inventory will either be weapons for your attacks or it'll end up buffing your attacks. Now, granted, if you die, you lose everything, but the incentive of exploring and progressing further is you can permanently unlock more inventory slots, which makes you more powerful. The game itself is a little clunky, but it did have multiplayer, and I don't know, it stood out enough that I wanted to mention it. I also tried Crisol Theater of Idols, which is, in a lot of ways, it kind of seems like it's trying to rip off Resident Evil, but I'd say it leans a little more heavily into the survival aspect of a survival horror game. Not that you're going around getting food or anything, but the gimmick with this game is that you shoot with your blood. So your health is directly tied to your ammunition. And there's also this weird, gigantic, dull guy, which is basically invincible. So if he shows up, you just run for it. Lots of really interesting proof of concept ideas, but generally speaking, I can't see this game being 5 hours long. Like, the full game definitely has to evolve the gameplay in some way, shape, or form, because even by the end of the demo, my patience was stretched. This is an older one, but I finally got around to trying the demo for Half Sword. If you like gimmicky joke, I mean, just look at the gameplay. If you like these types of games, well, here you go. This one exists. Another demo that's not necessarily from Next Fest was Arkos 2. This is a game that's been on my radar for a while just because it's basically voxel doom. What I played in the demo, I actually found quite enjoyable, but generally speaking, I don't think I'd be interested in the full game, though it is already out. It's voxel doom. It looks beautiful. The enemies will end up getting fragged and falling apart. You can even destroy some of the environment. It's really, really cool and has a lot going for it, but I don't know. There was also Verho. Anyway. This is your Kingsfield-like. Kingsfield was basically the predecessor to Dark Souls. In a sense, it's a very, very slow-paced dungeon crawler. But it does have some Souls-like elements, like if you end up resting, all the enemies respawn and stuff. They even had the Moonlight Greatsword, for crying out loud. The demo itself advertises being like 4 to 5 hours long, but I didn't really find it engaging enough to play for that long myself. I explored the swamp, and eventually I ended up getting my way to this big boss guy, who promptly killed me, and then the game asked me to reload my save rather than respawning. I guess in a true sense of a classic dungeon crawler, it's oh, you have one life and then you die and it's game over. But for me personally, I don't know, I didn't really find that to be that fun. Like, I'm all for a punishing death in a game, but if you're just going to end up erasing everything I did up to my last save point, then it's like, what are we even doing here? Another one that might surprise you guys is Cairn. You've probably already seen a lot of people talking about this one, and you know it's good when even I'm talking about it. I'm gonna be real, we kept seeing advertisements for this game at Game of the Year Awards, Summer Games Fest, and all that stuff. The game just kind of looks like crap. But playing it, man, it is, it's basically Peak, but more of a climbing simulation game. It doesn't go too hard into ultra realistic. It still is a video game at the end of the day, but I actually really liked it and enjoyed all the different mechanics. I've done a little bit of rock climbing myself, not a crazy amount, but enough to be able to recognize a lot of the absolutely stellar animations in this game. Like, on one hand, it's a video game, so your character can literally climb up a wall like a spider. But the fact that you have a pinch, a hold, all of these different things that basically play into getting a nice spot on a wall so you can get your stamina back is just really interesting. I don't know how interested I am in the full game. It's just something that I would recommend checking out. Another game that's technically not related to Next Fest, Sword Hero. This is a game that I've had on my wish list for, God, like over a year, I think. I had the demo installed for months and I finally got around to it, and oh my God, I am actually very excited for this one. This one's gonna be a banger. For those of you that don't know, back when I first started on this channel, I basically ended up playing a lot of suggested games from fans. And early on, a lot of my fan base was actually German. So one of the big games that people requested was the Gothic games. Gothic 2 in particular is one of my all-time favorites. And this game has heavy inspiration from the Gothic games, but without any of the old video game jank. In short, the demo is just combat trials where you're fighting enemies over and over again, but it has so many different mechanics to it that it just, The developer is currently working on an alpha version of the game for Kickstarter supporters, and as far as I know, the Kickstarter is gonna start in January. I will 100% be supporting this one. Also, if it's not obvious enough, ReAnimal is basically a game that's being made by the same developers as Little Nightmares 1 and 2, and in a lot of ways is a spiritual sequel to Little Nightmares 2, more so than Little Nightmares 3 ever could be. I'm sold on this game, but the demo itself was kind of lacking, if I'm being honest. And that about does it, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for watching. I hope that you ended up finding any of these games interesting or fun or whatever. You can leave your own suggestions down below, but keep in mind that a lot of these Next Fest demos are just going to be gone from the earth as soon as Next Fest is over. There was still a couple other games I didn't have time for during Next Fest. In particular, there was a few VR games. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe next time. Other than that, I have been steadily chipping away at a couple other games that I plan on doing some reviews on. And while I haven't beaten it yet, I will just say that I have been absolutely obsessed with Ball X Pit.